afarensis, and the other species which preceded the Homo species. None of them exist today. Then there was a spate of Homos. We had the Homo ergaster, the Homo habilis, the Neanderthals, all of these, but none of them exist today, and we are the only species in the genus Homo to remain alive. So there are various theories about origination of humans. There are theories which say that they all originated around the Ethiopia, Kenya, Rift Valley, but there are other theories now which we have found that they did indeed originate in Australia, in Java, Sumatra, and other places also, right? And evolution started taking place, they dispersed. They are, so Homo sapiens, we are sitting here, all of us. The other ones, the other species, well, they died. I mean, they got extinct as species go extinct, and of course, if we learn something from history, we know for sure that we are also going to go extinct at some point. But there's no hurry. And we're trying to hurry up that extinction by inducing climate change. So, and as humans evolved, humans occupied the spaces around the oceans, and we needed water for survival, liquid water. We are freshwater organisms, so we need fresh water. We are not a marine organism. And therefore, while we occupied the places around the sea, we were essentially looking at sources of fresh water, and sources of fresh water we found on the surface mainly, because there was no digging and there were no bore wells at that time. KSB and Kirloskar were yet to come up, so there were no pumps to extract the water, and we were relying mainly on the surface water. And as we relied on the surface water, we went into a stage where we kind of hunted and gathered for a very long time in our history. We were hunting gathering. Even today you have communities which are hunting gathering. Which one? Tribals. Do you know any names? Okay, well, I don't know. Thanks for that. So, there are indeed many tribes in the Amazon and Brazil which are here. But even in India, you have the Pasipardis, you have the Bills, the Gonds, the Santals, the Munda. So many other tribes are tribal communities which still are into hunting and gathering. But as we moved on, hunting and gathering was a very laborious way of existence. Every day morning you had to go out and find food for yourself and your family, come back. There was no storage of food, nothing. Again, next day morning you've got to go out and do the same thing. And this was not a life that you would really like to kind of say that it's an leisurely life. It was an enjoyable life, but not a very leisurely life. And at some point of time, we stumbled upon some few species which were very benign to us. And from that point onward became our pastoral journey where we domesticated animals. And the domestication of animals gave us a lot of advantages. The first major advantage is we actually now had a storage of food. Now we could kill the animal maybe 6 months later, and we had a stock, we could see our food which was going to last us for a very long time. And domestication proved mighty successful, and from then on our journey of conquering nature started. We started killing the species which were predating upon the domesticated animals. Even if they were not tasty, even if they were not in our food, we started killing them. And we started killing trees. The reason why we started doing that is because most of the domesticated animals are ruminants. They browse or they graze, and they need leaves, they need grass, and for food you cannot have shade. You need to start cutting trees and then allow the grasses to grow, allow the herbs to grow. All of that was happening. So as domestication started flourishing, so did our conquest on nature. This started increasing. At one point of time, we went into another form of a lifestyle, so to say, and that was when we discovered the domestication of flora, which is now called as agriculture or farming. We realized that there are a few species of trees, vanaspati, which are very useful to us. And then we started cutting the trees which were not useful to us in the manner of speaking in terms of food. And we started growing the ones which were useful for us. And agriculture became the biggest assault on nature. Even today, agriculture is indeed one of the biggest assaults on nature. Right? Our food systems are changing the face of the earth in a spectacularly intense manner. Yes.
Then what should we do to stop it?
Yeah, we'll come to that. So, and agriculture again The species which were favorable for domestication were the freshwater species. So now we started moving from around the seas and oceans towards the river banks. And from then on, our relationship with water started changing. Like our relationship with nature started changing after pastoralism, our relationship with water started changing after agriculture. And water came to be looked at more as a resource. The reason is very simple. Agriculture produces that one thing on which the economy is founded upon. And that is,
What?
no, agriculture produces what?
Food.
Food, but qualifier, adjective for food? Surplus. It creates so much surplus that you can't finish it off in one day. And that surplus was actually the precursor of wealth. If I have more surplus than Divyanshu, I am richer than Divyanshu because I can exchange it with more stuff that I want than he can, and therefore I am able to create a larger house, maybe fountains, baths, all of that. I can create all of that. So surplus that agriculture gave us became the defining factor of how societies were going to divide later on the basis of economy. Not on basis of what you do, not on basis of where you are born, not on basis of race or skin color, but on the basis of wealth. And because the surplus food was the source of wealth, then that source of wealth was very closely linked to the amount of land you own. And for the first time in history, land, nature came in private ownership. Now we were locked to a piece of land. In hunting, gathering and pastoralism, we were nomadic. We were moving from one landscape to another. But in farming, we had to stay on. From that point of time, Satbara Uttara became very important. Who owns that piece of land? That becomes the deciding. So the more land I own, the richer I get. And obviously those who started increasing their wealth started occupying the banks of the rivers, because fresh water was the most important thing, right? And as they started occupying that, then those peasants who were in the hinterland were the ones who were the smaller land ownership. And then water had to be transported from the rivers onto the hinterland. And water became the most important reason why we have what we today call as governance. Water needed to be administered. There was a limited supply of fresh water, and there was an unlimited demand of fresh water as everybody went into agriculture. Well, when I'm saying everybody, it's not really everybody, but most of the population turned into agriculture. And then water had to be monitored, the supply, the demand had to be monitored, and then you had administration, then you had governance, then you had cities, then you had taxes, then you had wealth, then you had public spaces. All of that came after agricultural surplus came into existence. And one of the first engineering technologies to be developed by humankind was hydraulic engineering. Because water had to be transported, water had to be stored, water had to be metered, water had to be given, distributed. All of these things needed us to improve our skills of hydrology, of irrigation, of water distribution. All of these kind of things happened. And now, by now you would have realized that rivers are no longer rivers, but they are a source of economic wealth. Because they are the reasons why we are going to create the surplus. They are the reasons why we are going to administer that piece of land. They are the reason why we will be able to control a population and a community there. So from that point of time, our relationship with fresh water especially started changing dramatically.
Is there like a actual correlation between
Influenced by the amount of natural capital that a nation had. But that was to change dramatically around 1400 when colonization started taking place. So the nations which had very little natural capital were the ones who started going out and seeking colonizing. Right? All the temperate climatic countries, they were the ones who colonized. And all the tropical climatic countries were the ones who got colonized for their natural wealth.
Like India.
Like India, yeah, like Indonesia, like Singapore, like Brazil, like Latin American countries, like African countries, all of those had a lot of natural wealth, and all that was now going to be shipped onto the colonizers for over periods of time. And this started happening, and that changed the distribution of wealth, the wealth, what we call as wealth today in society.
I think ancient civilization, I mean, that could be an indicator of wealth. All were based near the river.
Because we had by that time moved on from barter towards currency of exchange, and currency of exchange allowed us to store wealth much better than it allowed us to store food. So now we have very wealthy people because of agriculture, because of use of fresh water. But all of wealth at that some point of time depended upon how much access to water you have. It holds good even today. Some of the poorest of the societies in India are the ones who do not have access to fresh water throughout the year. They are marginal farmers far away from the command areas and catchment areas, and they are the ones who can hardly take one crop in the entire year. So as their access to water and their water availability has gone down, they are unable to come out of poverty, and they are pushed into what we call in economics as chronic poverty. Successive generations are unable to come out of poverty. On the other hand, well, at some point of time, my forefathers were poor, but they moved to Pune, they were educated, and they came out of poverty, so that is a transitionary poverty. But if you don't have access to water, if you're a marginal farmer, you're still poor over so many generations. So water still decides the amount of wealth you have. Right? So coming back to rivers, our topic for today. Yeah, when we are talking about fresh water, we need to talk about the hydrological cycle. The hydrological cycle is an extremely important cycle due to which we have the supply of fresh water. There is not a single drop of fresh water on the planet by itself, by nature. It is all generated through the hydrological cycle. Right? And nature has the most decentralized way of distributing fresh water on the planet. That is what is precipitation. There are three forms of precipitation: rainfall, snowfall, dew. Yeah? Dew is very important. Today we have forgotten dew. एकेकाळी दवावरती शेती करायची, रब्बीची शेती दवावरती आपल्याकडे व्हायची. On dew we used to take farms produce, but today it doesn't happen because the climate has changed. The dew formation, there are no substrates on which dew can settle down. You know, we need that cold substrate where dew can settle down, but that doesn't exist today, and therefore.
I'll just quickly add on that.
Sure.
Kerala still experiences that, no?
Dew.
I have experienced in our farmhouse where it's actually like raining, but it's dew.
There you are. See, that's precipitation. And we forget to take dew in our water budgets because we think it's inconsequential. That's a huge source of soil moisture. In the morning, it increases the soil moisture. So coming back to that. Now, when I said that nature is the most decentralized form of distributing fresh water by rains, by precipitation, by snowfall, however, it is extremely unequal. Some parts of the planet have got 3,000 millimeters of rainfall. Some parts of the planet don't have rain for 8 to 10 years. Right? So therefore, it is up to the rivers to carry the water to hinterland where there are no instances of rainfall. And thus, rivers became extremely important when we are looking at environmental justice as a fundamental factor in economics. And environmental justice for all depends upon the fresh water availability for all. And if that, today we have stopped that. We have stopped that by various means and ways. And again, coming back to temperate climates and tropical climates. Temperate climates have got a little more advantage than tropical climates, especially the Indian peninsula, in that they have rains almost throughout the year. On the other hand, we are a monsoon-fed country for the large part of our area. Right? Peninsular region is entirely, and a little bit of northern India is entirely monsoon-fed. That means that the nature of rivers in India is going to be different than the nature of rivers in Western countries. And therefore, solutions for rivers in Western countries are not going to be copy-paste applicable to Indian conditions. And we have not realized that 75 years after independence. that we cannot make the same embankments that Paris and London can. It's not going to be useful here.
Why was that?
Come again?
I didn't get it. Why is it not the same?
Because they are perennial rivers. Yeah, they've got rainfall throughout their catchment throughout the year, and they have water flowing. They have dilution of sewage. We don't have dilution of sewage. What Pune leaves out is going undiluted towards Ujni and to Solapur. Right? On the other hand, what London leaves is going to be diluted with a lot of freshwater addition by rain, and that's going to go into the sea. Of course, they don't do that, but they used to do that for a very long time until the Parliament put up a law saying we don't want floating sewage across when we are sitting in the House of Lords. Is the House of Lords, they call themselves Lords, and they wanted to seem like Lords, but this didn't exist. So European, American, North American rivers are quite different in their nature and the way that they irrigate the land, the way that they originate, all of that. In India, we have a very unique system of rivers, and I think by far the most spectacular system that you will ever find on the planet is in India, in the Indian River Range. We have about 4 or 5 source regions in the entire country. And the source regions are and
Western
and
Plateau.
no, some plateaus, yes, but almost all the mountain ranges are the source regions. So we have the Vindhyas, the Aravallis, the Eastern Ghats, the Western Ghats, yeah, the Mishimi Hills, the Himalayas, the lower Himalayas, the middle Himalayas, the greater Himalayas. All of those are the source regions of the route. That is where our rivers originate. And all our mountain ranges are actually barriers to the moisture laden clouds, and that is why they have significantly higher precipitation in the monsoon, and that rainfall is going to collect and it's going to come out in various streams, first order, second order streams, and they are going to join up somewhere and form the mighty rivers that we have. If you were to broadly classify the rivers in India, you could cross-tabulate largely 2 factors. The first is the source region, and the second is where they are draining into. So the largest source regions on the planet are Himalayas and the Western Ghats. All of peninsular India is fed with rains which happen on the Western Ghats.
Stopped by Western.
And stopped by?
Western Ghats.
No, the rainfall of Western Ghats is collected and drained. That is how the rivers in peninsular India are. The Himalayan rivers originate in the Himalayas, right? So we have 2 types of classification already, originating in the Himalayas and originating in the Western Ghats of peninsular India. You can cross-tabulate that with 2 other factors. Where are they draining into? So Himalayan rivers draining into the Bay of Bengal, Himalayan rivers draining into the Arabian Sea. Western Ghat rivers draining into the Bay of Bengal, and Western Ghat rivers draining into the Arabian Sea. You cross-tabulate that, you have a scheme of 4 different types of rivers. And these 4 different types of rivers have unique personalities. The Himalayan rivers which drain into the Arabian Sea all drain out through Pakistan and that area. Yeah, they exit the land through
Indus.
Pakistan. Yeah, all of them. The big rivers of Punjab and the Indus, all of those rivers exit from Pakistan. And therefore, they are transnational waters, as they are called. We have to share the water between us and Pakistan, and us and the other countries. The Himalayan rivers which drain out into the Bay of Bengal form one of the most spectacular landscapes on the entire planet, which is the Sundarban.
Which is
Sundarban.
Sundarban.
Yeah, one of the most ecologically productive places on the entire planet. Those are the Sundarban. So the Ganga, the Yamuna,
Brahma.
the Brahmaputra, the Meghna, all of them feed their silt and organic matter and all the rich alluvium onto the Sundarbans, which makes it so damn spectacular.
Meghna county river.
From Bangladesh, but it originates in the Himalayas. Right? So even Brahmaputra and Ganga, you would have noticed, they originate around the same hill, but one on the north side of the hill and the other on the south side of the hill. But they are completely different personalities originating from the same precipitation. Totally. Kosi River. Do you know what is the source of the Kosi River?
Kosi River. Is there a name? Kosi River. I heard it first time.
Kosi River is Mount Everest. Mount Everest drains into the Kosi River, then it joins the GBM, the Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna system, and that forms that. We have some beautiful rivers in peninsular India. We have the largest rivers, Krishna and Godavari, which originate very, very near Pune in the Western Ghats. They go on and meet they are draining into the
From Andhra.
Bay of Bengal, yeah, from Andhra. And on the east coast of India, because you have these large rivers flowing very long distances, you have beautiful mangrove estuaries and deltas. In fact, the deltas on the east coast are so rich that if you look at the Indian map, they have increased our land. I'll try and draw a very poor. So this is the west coast, and if you look at the east coast, it's like this. All of this is the land formation. Right from Mahanadi, Damodar, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, all of them have been putting silt onto our eastern coast, and our land is actually
So
increasing.
otherwise it was like this.
It must have been somewhere like this, right? So this is land addition because of all these rivers going there.
So it
It's still increasing, but we have stopped it because of,
in the Western Ghats they stop the rain.
yeah, the Western Ghats are here, and the Western Ghats have this small little gap here. Do you know what is this?
Palak.
Excellent. It's called the Palaghat gap or the Palakkad gap, right? How do you know?
Because I saw on Google Maps in the middle there is.
Absolutely perfect. You know, this Palaghat gap is very important for cities in the south, especially Bangalore. Have you ever wondered why Bangalore gets so much rains in the summer? Palaghat gap. In this gap, the moisture-laden clouds are able to enter hinterland, and they get all that rain. So you go to Kunnur, you go to Kurg, they always have clouds. That's because of the Palaghat gap. This Palaghat gap becomes very important. It was also the reason why Tamilians were able to get into Kerala, and there was a mixing of cultures, and even today it happens there. Also very unique about rivers in India. Many of the rivers have got endemic fauna. And one of the most important things to happen if we also flora, but more fauna. Fauna has smaller organisms and they have a shorter metabolic cycle. So if we interlink our rivers, we are going to kill all this diversity and endemism. So the biota from one river is going to go and mix into another river, and what ecological problems that will have, nobody can ever think of that, because a mathematical model cannot replicate what happens in nature. We don't know nature enough to put it into an Excel sheet or into some mathematical model. Coming back to rivers of India, so these rivers were the lifelines of India. So I have been talking about peninsular rivers. Peninsular rivers are totally separate, and they have been coming here, and all of them are seasonally fed. Not so with the Himalayan rivers. They are not seasonally fed. They are fed twice a year. Once in summer with the melting snow, and once in monsoon with the rainfall. So therefore, all those rivers continuously have much more water than we have in the peninsula, because of the melt, snow melt, and the glaciers. We have literally thousands of glaciers in the entire Hindu Kush Himalayan range, and these are continuously melting and feeding that. But there are also some very unique rivers in India which originate in peninsular India but join the Himalayan river basin. Any idea which of them?
Which originate in peninsular India.
Yeah, and join the Himalayan river system. Yeah, so they travel from south to north.
Sundarbans.
No, not in Sundarbans. In Madhya Pradesh. Entire tiger country is full of those rivers.
Narmada.
The Chambal. No, not Narmada. Narmada is another unique river. The Chambal, the Son, the Ken, the Betwa, All
Oh.
of these rivers flow from south to north. They originate in peninsular India and they go and meet the Ganga Yamuna system. Very
Oh.
unique. And likewise, we have rivers which flow from north to south. The Sabarmati is a very unique river in that. The Mahi is also flowing from north to south.
Then,
And Narmada,
I was asking that.
what about the Narmada?
East to
What is its source region?
No,
Amarkantak.
Yeah, Amarkantak is where it originates. But where does it get its water from? It gets its water from a very unique geography. It is sandwiched between the Vindhyas and the Satpura.
Satpuras.
Right? So it's a very narrow rift valley.
Mm.
And therefore, you have the nation has a very unique river in Narmada which flows from the west to
West
east.
to east.
All our peninsular rivers flow on the other side. And our Indian plate, if you look at the Indian plate, it is tilted like this. It is lower here and it is higher here. And therefore, all the rivers will drain out here. It's only in the rift valley between the Vindhyas and the Satpuras that you have a negative slope. Rest of the entire country is sloped that way. So in this slope, you have the Narmada flowing there and also the Tapi flowing there. So Tapi just flows beyond that.
but from Western Ghats, the river also flows in Arabian Sea.
Right. Therefore, and that's what I said. This point is lower than this point.
But then how then they go from
That is the rift valley. So that's
नो नो अरेबियन सी मध्ये कसे जातात
Arabian Sea.
कारण का तो माउंटेन
good
असा
point.
आहे ना काम कायम
So how do Western Ghats rivers go to the Arabian Sea? Which rivers?
Vaishishti, Savitri,
Savitri, Vasishti, Gandhari, Kal,
uh,
Jagbudi.
Palli.
Anybody from Mumbai?
Mithi.
मिठी
Yeah. So all these rivers are very, very short rivers. They originate in the Western Ghats and they travel just about 100 kilometers, 80 kilometers, 150 kilometers and they meet the Arabian Sea. And because it's such a short distance, such heavy precipitation in the Sahyadris get around 6,000 millimeters of rainfall. Around 3,000 millimeters of that rainfall drains into the Arabian Sea and 3,000 millimeters drains into the Bay of Bengal. So when it drains into the Arabian Sea, it is gushing. It is very, you get white waters there, like you get in the Himalayan source region. Because there are intense slopes and very short distance from the source region to the sea. And therefore it's very difficult to put dams there. Thankfully. Yeah, because of the slope, because of the water quantity, because of and
So it is good.
when you have the hilly regions, rivers are very narrow. They cut deep, they don't go wide. On the plateau, they don't cut deep, they go wide. Right? So if you look at Krishna, Godavari, Yamuna at Taj Agra, not Taj Hotel. So you have very wide rivers because it's on the plateau. But if you look at Himalaya, if you look at Sahyadri, they're very deep gorges being cut continuously as there is severe slope and the water gushes. Like I said, river is a flow of energy, not a flow of water, not just a flow of water. So it cuts deep, and therefore the rivers in Konkan are very unique than the rivers up there. Let's talk a little bit about the economic value. I think we have by and large established the economic value when we talked about agriculture. Right? The foundation of any economy of any nation depends solely upon the food available. And if that is the case, then it depends solely upon the fresh water availability. And if that is the case, it depends solely upon how rivers transport the fresh water and how they recharge groundwater sources and how much precipitation you have. So it depends solely on the water balance, so to say, in simple language. And therefore, you will see that in India, we have this extremely intricate linkage of fresh water, surface water, which is recharging groundwater and is providing water to so many deep interior parts which are not fed by surface water. Aquifers run long. Jeevitnadi, you must have talked about groundwater. You had a session on hydrogeology, right? So these aquifers run for literally hundreds of kilometers under the surface, confined aquifers, shallow aquifers, all of this. And they are being recharged by the hydrologic cycle as well as the surface water. So this becomes very important source of how the nation is going to make its food and how that food is going to yield people who are going to make money for the region. Transportation, yes.
What is
Transportation.
economic value of river?
Rivers.
Okay.
Sorry? recreation, a lot of money with tourism. Yeah. And by selling houses, Riverview apartments. There was a nice joke on Riverview apartments on one of the Jeevitnadi groups.
Hydroelectric energy we need.
Yeah, very important.
It's one behind us, huh? Immediately.
Right?
Riverview apartment.
Riverview apartments. They're all Riverview apartments. They will now change
Skyscraper.
to sewage view apartments.
सोसायटीचं ऑफिशियल नाव पूर्वी रिव्हर व्ह्यूच होतं.
अच्छा.
ऑफिशियल मग नंतर त्याला आयरिन टॉवर म्हणजे सबसेट बनवला.
हा.
मोठा हा जो पूर्ण परिसर आहे हा नाईक नवऱ्यांचा पूर्ण 45 एकर्सचा त्याची स्कीमचं नाव होतं रिव्हर व्ह्यू स्कीम.
So, Riverview apartments actually plays well on public psyche, right? Or a river, when I open my window, I'll see a river, so I want to buy that house. And maybe when they come and see what is a river here or the lack of it, then they will say, no, I'm not going to pay for that. So then probably they change it to Irene Towers or whatever.
But then it's already sold.
By that time it's already sold. Yes. Yeah, so hydroelectric is another very important economic value of river. And so when the British left India 75 years ago, they left India not because of the Quit India movement or anything else, but because there was nothing left in India to take away.
They got bored of it.
They got bored, yeah, I don't know.
चूस लिया था उस तब तक ऐसे.
They have already looted so many things.
हाँ, चूस लिया था हमको.
And India already was in a very bad shape in terms of political turmoil, caste, religion, all of that. And they said, okay, now we are not going to manage you. You go back, take it, and we are going to leave. When they did that, they had already given us some of our biggest famines. Like you would remember the Bengal famine, which killed literally millions, 8 or 9 million people. That famine was a result of several factors, not just lack of production, but there was a huge pest attack in West Bengal. The Japanese had bombed Rangoon, and there was mass migration from Rangoon into Kolkata. The population suddenly increased of Bengal, and the Japanese attack kind of the traders of Kolkata feared the Japanese attack, and many of them left, and the godowns were locked, and food was not available, so on and so forth. But to cut the long story short, millions of people died in that famine. It was not a problem of production, but it was a problem of management and misgovernance and lack of empathy towards the local people by the British. But successively we had more famines. We had the Bihar famine after that. We had another famine in Madhya Pradesh. All of this left India, and especially Nehru, thinking that we must first invest in our agricultural system. And to invest in the agrarian system, the only thing that British had taught us was to build dams. Why am I saying the British had taught us? Because before the British, we had an extremely impressive and sustainable way of managing fresh water. There were traditional water harvesting systems, very, very unique to agroclimatic and biogeographic systems. What Tamil Nadu did, Bihar did completely different. What the Kutch did, the rest of the Gujarat did differently. What they used in Imphal and Manipur was different from what they used in Ladakh. Right? So all of these regional differences were extremely unique in terms of their water storage capacity, water harvesting capacity, water use, and water improvement, so to say, community management of water resources. But all of that was thrown to the wind when the British landed in India, and the British said, to control the local people, we have to control water. And they changed the extremely decentralized way of water governance into a highly centralized way of water governance. They kept all the decisions with themselves, and they were able to control it well themselves, as in with the zamindars, and they had the mahalwari, the rayatwari system, the zamindari system. All these systems were essentially controlling water as a resource, so that taxes could be collected there and people could be managed. And when this happened, we lost our identity with traditional water harvesting systems. We lost the knowledge which was handed over by word of mouth. There were no documented systems, so people were unable to do so. The ahar pine of Bihar still exists. The zabo still exists in Northeast Asia. ARI system of Tamil Nadu still exists, but nobody managed it because we have created large structures which Nehru very famously called as the temples of modern India, which were the dams. The first 5-year plan made significant investments in dams. So the Bhakra Nangal Dam was the first. The Damodar Valley project was another project to come up. And we successively brought all our rivers into a complete economic constraint. Now the rivers were no longer free-flowing rivers. They were owned by the government of India. Exactly like the British wanted us to have it. Huh?
Big person has got a question.
Yes.
They say that the dams prevent floods, but when they open the gate, it causes even more bigger floods.
Where did you read that dams prevent floods?
In the school level.
Hmm.
I'm sorry I asked that question.
No, it is fine.
No, but
It is fine.
yeah, so dams prevent flood was a narrative which was used for a very long time by hydrologists, but they are all agreed now that dams cannot prevent floods. Right? So that's gone. That textbook has to be put into the raddi. You take 5 rupees per kilo for the textbook.
We have to still write the same in the exam. So we have to tell him that we have arguments because he denies a lot of things in this book.
Yeah.
Yes, he cannot tell the reality in exams.
Yeah.
True that.
And that is
So, you know, the centralized way of management was picked up by Nehru from Russia, Nikita Khrushchev, and you know his central planning. We kind of admired that. We threw to wind what Gandhi was saying, what Mahadev Govind Ranade had said much before Gandhi, what Gopal Krishna Gokhale has said, what so many other intellectuals had advised Nehru against that, and he went ahead and you know went on with that system of investing in agriculture and creating large dams. The large dams, and we have a huge network, we have a labyrinth of dams in the Himalayan rivers, which have completely shut down all the alluvial matter coming into Sundarbans. So the ecological productivity of Sundarbans has been diminishing every day since the first dam was created on that, in that particular riverine system. And so much so that the Sundarbans is now unable to support the apex predator there, which is the tiger, and the aquatic apex predator, which was the crocodile. If a landscape cannot support the apex predator, then it's a very clear indicator that the food chain down below has broken. And the food chain down below has broken because the ecological productivity of that landscape has diminished. So that landscape is unable to host the smallest of the organisms, which are the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the feeders who are feeding on that, then the primary carnivores who are feeding on that, and the secondary carnivores, and so on and so forth. So when the food chain below that is broken, then the apex predator cannot survive, and when the apex predator cannot survive, then humans rush in. For fools rush in where angels fear to tread. That's exactly what happens with humans. And I always say, the most invasive species on the planet is not water hyacinth and subabul and lanterna, it is Homo sapiens.
It's human.
We rush into areas where there is no apex predator. We go in where the food chain is broken, and then we cultivate agriculture, and we use up all the groundwater and the surface water.
We spoil it.
Sorry?
We spoil it.
Yeah, and we spoil everything. Spoil it for ourselves. And this started happening. Sundarban started degrading all the estuaries, all the mangrove forests. We started taking away the mangrove forest. Oh, by the way, if you want to write what actually stops flood, you should write the answer as mangrove forests, not dams. And mangroves are actually ecological landscape. Huh? Coconut trees? Not really. Well, trees in general, yes, but not specifically coconut trees. Many other trees can actually do that. Yeah, so we invested, and the logic behind creating all these labyrinth of dams in the Himalayas was that it will yield hydroelectricity. And we looked at hydroelectricity as green energy. And we always love green energy, right? The entire Las Vegas, thankfully, is powered by Hoover Dam, which gets hydroelectricity. Otherwise, Las Vegas guzzles electricity like one small country. There's so much particular. But today we know that hydroelectricity is no longer green energy. It's not at all green. It has killed rivers, it has displaced tribals, it has taken them to places where they don't know what to do with that landscape, they are not used to that landscape, they are pushed into poverty, they are pushed into chronic poverty, and this is not what is today known as just transition. Just as in justice. We have to move from a fossil fuel economy to a renewable energy economy, but we have to do so in a very just and fair manner. If we use hydroelectricity, it's not just because it has displaced animals, tribals, it has submerged forests, it has killed the landscape, it has taken away the area from the flora and the fauna and diverted towards human use. So you can hardly call that as just transition. So hydroelectricity was a huge economic resource for that. Fishing. In India we had literally hundreds of fishing communities which existed only on freshwater fish. In West Bengal you still have that. You go to the chicken's neck. You know what is a chicken's neck?
Chicken's neck.
Huh? Chicken's neck is that smallest part of India which is the most vulnerable. What is that? Where is it?
Means West Bengal and Sikkim.
Yeah. Which connects mainland of India with the northeastern states. You have to pass through a very small region which is, at the top of it is Darjeeling, and at the bottom you have to pass through that. So very narrow stretches of just about a few hundred, not even 100 kilometers, less than that. That's the chicken's neck.
Chicken's neck.
There you will see communities which still thrive on freshwater fishing. Right? Which is the most charismatic river which is there, which flows through that? Teesta is a beautiful river. It originates at a height of almost 1700 feet. It's one of the. It's a river which originates at one of the highest points. Probably, yeah, in one glacier, and then it melts and comes down. As soon as it hits the ground, the Teesta is a very small river. If you're traveling in the Himalayas and if you are coming down Darjeeling, it's a very small river. But as soon as it hits the plateau, it breaks into a million braids. It's a beautiful large river, right? And it is stopped only by the one single barrage, the Gajaldoba barrage, which is also a wetland. But the Gajaldoba barrage has stopped the entire sediment flow and the organic flow which enters that. But along with the Teesta, you have many other rivers. You have the Torsha, you have the Kaljani, you have the Jaldhaka, you have the Murti, very small rivers, very beautiful rivers. And they are the lifelines of that Chicken Neck area, and there are so many endemic and very tasty fish. Yeah, because there would be some fish lovers here, which are not marine fish, but they are freshwater fish. Sorry? Trout, yeah. The trout, and so many species of the trout exist there. The Ilish, the Hilsa, which is there, that also comes from the Torsha and the Teesta and that region. And that's a huge economic value because Hilsa earns a lot of money for the farmers there, as well as the trout. But we no longer have the trout. But now we have the breeding nurseries for that. Now, because of the Gajaldoba barrage, look what has happened downstream when you create one dam. The communities downstream are unable to get their fish because they cannot go back to the source region to breed. You have large dams, they cannot cross those barrages. And because they don't have that, then they have created a system of pukurs. If you've been to Calcutta, there are pukurs there. Right? Pukur is a pond or a dam. Pond or a lake. They've created pukurs where they do fish breeding. So in Teesta you have many pukurs, in Jaldhaka.
So fish harvesting
they do there.
They do there in pukurs.
Yeah, in the pukurs. And diggis they call it. In some parts they call it diggis, but in Kolkata they are pukurs.
So these are
the Pukur area used to be a large lake. Garden Reach was all once upon a time brackish water wetlands. You have.
So these are local names, you mean?
They are the local Bengali, West
Bengali names
which come up there.
Pukurs, diggis.
Yeah, so they were yielding a lot of economic value there. What else do you think would be the economic value of the rivers?
Farming also?
Yes, farming, of course we talk. That's a fundamental thing, right?
River banks.
Minerals? Soil creation, the first thing I said. That is the biggest economic value which has been completely left out of economics. Mineral mixing, soil creation, deposition, erosion. Yeah, nobody talks about soil in economics. Nobody looks at rivers as a source of soil deposition there. Anything else that we can think of?
She had mentioned recreation.
Recreation, yeah, tourism, recreation. It's a source of spiritual place. You know, it's a place where you can go back to your senses. All of those, yeah. Let's look at non-economic values. What are the non-economic values of rivers?
Biodiversity.
Biological diversity. Why is that a non-economic value?
Because no one buys jug.
No one cares about it. Why doesn't anybody care about biodiversity? Because it does not have a market price to it. Yeah. If you have a market price, then it is coveted. If there is no market price, nobody cares for it. You know, air does not have a market price. We don't care for it. Everybody buys 2-3 cars and spews out the smoke in on the roads. Nobody
But
cares
we
for it.
cannot also buy everything.
Thankfully.
But we have to start buying also. Oxygen to milna hi padega.
We have oxygen bars.
Yes.
PMC is putting up some oxygen parks. No?
Yeah.
Yes.
By cutting 59 trees.
What a brilliant idea.
After cutting 59 trees, they are building the oxygen park.
So there are oxygen
Very
cylinders,
nice.
right? When we saw in COVID, we had to buy. That is air only.
That is it.
Mm-hmm.
We buy oxygen because it is useful.
Yeah.
But then we'll get shocked na so much of oxygen.
Yeah. So biological diversity is something which comes from. So mainland is all freshwater organisms. You don't have marine organisms after you leave the sea. So all the organisms need fresh water. Therefore, the biggest non-economic value, which is, and when I say non-economic, it's not captured in economics. It is of economic value actually, but we don't realize that. Is irrigation of forests, creation of biological diversity, and the trees. The most important thing on the planet are the trees. I always like to use this example. We don't make our own food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we?
We cook it, not make
Yeah.
it.
Do we make our own food? No, we don't. We watch Sanjeev Kapoor do something and we make a recipe out of it, but we don't make our own food. Do tigers make their own food?
Mm-hmm. No.
Do butterflies?
No.
Birds?
No.
Animals? No. Who makes their own food?
Trees make for us.
The only organisms on the planet who make their own food are the organisms who have the photosynthetic capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, they are extremely unique. The entire planet rests upon the shoulders of those who can produce their own food. That is the plant organism. Yeah? And then the chain starts. But they know that they have to create food for the entire planet. Therefore, they create so much surplus of their own food.
Ah.
They don't need so many leaves. They don't need so many fruits. They don't need so much nectar. They don't need so much flowers. They don't need their work to be so big. But they know that the entire food chain rests upon what they are producing. And therefore, they are the ones on whose shoulders you and I exist. And all the biological diversity. And they are irrigated by surface water and groundwater. That is the single most important non-economic value, which should actually be economic value. Yeah, none of them can survive on marine water. They have to have the hydrologic cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes the single most thing which we completely overlook in our economic thinking and our economic textbooks.
But now, sir, they are culturing the food in laboratories also. Now they have started testing, making meat
Yeah.
in laboratories. They have
What do
even
the scientists who make
multiply-
that meat, what do they eat?
They are first eating the raw, of
They eat
course.
photosynthetic.
Right now they are,
Yeah.
but they have started shifting. Means even if the work is
So you'll
started.
be surprised. Okay, let's go back to what she's saying. Right? Can we make our own food?
Without from a very living
Yeah.
comes from
So they are trying to make meat from plants, but then again it is good.
Yeah. So the answer to the question of can we make our own food is very simple. Nature tells us that no, you cannot make your own food. In the laboratory, you can. So manufacturing and production is a figment of the economist's imagination. There is no manufacturing and production. You can only convert from one thing to another. Conversion is possible, but not manufacturing. Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. However much whoever thinks he can create matter or he can create wealth, it cannot be done. You can transform something into matter, right? So the entire story about the planet is about transformation. The sunlight, the amount of solar energy falling on the planet is converted into photosynthetic capacity, converted into leaf, food, and then it is converted into biomass like the skin and my flesh and my muscles. All of that is all biological mass which is created by photosynthetic capacity. So there is nothing possible which can be created there. So what is the other non-economic value? Come again? Temperature regulation. Yeah, indeed. Microclimate, temperature regulation, atmospheric gas balance, groundwater recharge. All of these are what are called as ecological services which the river provides. Huh? Carbon fixation, carbon sequestration. It allows phytoplanktons, and phytoplanktons actually sequester carbon. Wetlands are one of the biggest carbon sinks on the planet. After oceans, mangrove, all of these are carbon sinks. Sundarbans is a huge carbon sink. All of that is all what we term as non-economic value in that. So the river is very unique because it flows on a terrestrial ecosystem. It's an aquatic ecosystem which is flowing. And this terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem, that interface is what we call as the riparian zones. And the riparian zones are extremely important for the exchange of matter and energy. What is an ecosystem? Monali, I think, has already done this little thing of ecosystems and biodiversity, right? Just revising what she said. Ecosystems have two factors. One, physical factors, and you have biological factors. And the exchange of matter and energy between the physical and biological elements makes up an ecosystem. What do you mean by exchange of matter and energy?
Matter and energy.
Food production is exchange of matter and energy. The plant takes minerals from the soil, which is physical matter. It takes water, which is physical, and it creates biological mass. Exchange of matter and energy. The hydrologic cycle is an exchange of matter and energy. The sun heats up the water, it converts into evaporation, it forms clouds, and it exchanges it in some other place. It's an exchange of matter and energy. Groundwater recharge is exchange of matter and energy. Anything which a tree which is sitting on the river bank, the leaves fall into the water, exchange of matter. Those leaves are eaten by the degraders, exchange of energy. Those fish are eaten by some other predator, exchange of energy. They are caught by humans and eaten, exchange of energy. So there is a continuous exchange of matter and energy which is going on in all the rivers all the time. And that gives rise to what we call as ecological services. So ecological services of the river are not at all captured in any economic value. No economist knows about it. It's very strange, but
It's like ignoring the very fundamental of the base foundation.
The very foundation we are ignoring.
ignoring the reason how we exist rather than why we exist.
For us, economy is different.
Yeah.
It's just gaining and greediness,
I think we
isn't
assume
it?
our existence.
Yeah.
And then
We
are
know
doing the
economy, but to our greed.
It's just we assume that it's there.
Yeah.
That's the assumption.
Right.
But it's not considered while planning.
So then it is
But
guaranteed
now
to
that
die.
assumption is getting
We can see it.
is going to be
Yeah.
questioned.
When I was drinking water, I was looking at matter which needs to be exchanged. I can see mangoes there.
Yes. We are in mango
Yeah, there are so
orchid.
many fruit bats
You
here.
can actually smell the figs when I stand here.
Yes.
The fermentation.
Yeah.
Umbar,
Umbar, yeah.
umbar, audumbar.
So that's a typical riparian vegetation. Umbar, Waluns, Karan, which you see here, Pardambur, Sita. So all of these are typical interface zone kind of trees. You do find them in other places, but mainly here.
there any animal or bird that is not found in southern Western?
There are many of them. There are many fauna which are endemic to northern Western Ghats. There are many which are endemic to southern Western Ghats. So in India we have a lot of endemism. You go to Germany, they won't even know this word. There is no endemism. It's such a small country.
Really?
It's not spread vertically. It doesn't have that diversity. So
Though they have got all mountainous area, they don't know what
they
is.
don't have they are in the temperate climate where they are short in supply of sunlight. We are very rich in supply of sunlight, and therefore the floral diversity doesn't exist. So the physical diversity doesn't exist. Therefore the floral diversity is minimum, and because the floral diversity is minimum, the faunal diversity is very less. So all these are interconnected.
India is tropical zone.
Most parts.
Okay.
Can you talk a little about the economics of the RFB?
Economics of the RFD.
RFD. Ah, garam hai.
But it's an accumulation of grass.
But then should we do?
What should we do? What?
So can we say that this riverfront project is actually not creating economic value but concentrating the wealth in the hands of a few?
Exactly.
Hmm.
That is what
absolute.
most of capitalist
Correct.
economy is doing all the time.
They're taking control over
Yeah.
in one few
So
hands.
those who have the wealth, they are the ones who govern what happens to the natural capital.
Ah.
So they can just make everything according to them. So they get richer and more powerful. Yeah.
मैं थोड़ा सा हिटलरगिरी
Like the
होती
dam culture.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
म्हणजे हिटलर सारखं होणार थोडंसं.
Like building of expressways, more roads, it is always directed towards more and more production of whatever goods and
More
all.
control
We of course
to
get the benefits and all.
More
but
control, right?
जितका कंट्रोल करणार इतका त्यांची पॉवर राहणार.
Can we jot down, let's say 10 bullet points that should be the ideal way what we should do for Pune? I mean, if let's play a role play. If I am Modi and I come to you, Gurudas, advise me what should we do to Pune, or for that matter, there is a heavy concentration coming up, like population concentration is building up exponentially.
Yeah.
I have to take care of the city, I have to take care of accommodation and water supply. So advise me what 10 bullet points or let's say 5 bullet points that should be the path forward to achieve strike the balance between this.
डेव्हलपमेंट.
शहरीकरण चुकीचंच आहे.
हां.
ठीक आहे, शहरीकरण चुकीचं आहे, ठीक आहे, परंतु त्या कुठेतरी आय एम जस्ट ट्राइंग टू प्ले
समन्वय गाठला पाहिजे तो.
So the first bullet point is identify and involve every stakeholder who depends on the river.
So even the question you are asking, Gurudas should not be the one answering.
No,
It should be
so that's the
people
first
who are-
bullet point.
yeah, it should
And
be
the second bullet point is when they come together, they'll put up the 9 bullet points.
Correct.
Hmm.
That's what stakeholders.
Very nicely answered.
Stakeholders.
Yeah.
Again, we learned from Shailaja Tai, there are primary stakeholders, secondary stakeholders, tertiary. So do you mean to say the primary stakeholders?
That is a convenient way
So,
of classifying.
so I am saying that's a human way of classifying. It doesn't matter. Have all the stakeholders will depend upon that. Yeah? So it has to be there. Somebody downstream, as somebody sitting in Vishakhapatnam also should be brought here. Because finally we are in the upper Bhima catchment, which is going into the Krishna basin. So all of that, those people should be taken care of. Where is the voice for animals? Where is the voice for trees? Where is the voice for tribals?
They are
Where is the voice for
stakeholders. They are
all of
bigger
those
stakeholders.
things? Right? So first and foremost is get that. Then what happens is, you have to ask what are the expectation of each stakeholder. Right? So check out what are the expectations of each of the stakeholders from the river, from the riverine ecosystem, all of that. Jot them down. Next, what I usually do whenever I'm involved in these kind of things, I make a expectation conflict matrix.
Expectation,
Conflict. You know, everybody's expectation is not going to converge. The fisherman wants water in the dam. The hotelier wants water in the river. So they are in conflict with each other. Right? So when you lay out all the stakeholders and then you lay out all their expectations, then you will have a conflict map. Then you do a prioritization. What are the first things you need for survival? What are the important things you need for ecosystem services? What are the important things that downstream people need? And then you prioritize that. And then you already have a 10 bullet point technology at all. It's about how do you create more FSI, how do you create more land availability so that you can create more rent value. It's about how you can create. So one of the ecosystem services is aesthetic services, right? But that's just one of it. When you have aesthetic services, you have an entire chain of other services which are the exchange of matter and energy. You have hydrologic cycle, you have primary food production, you have groundwater recharge, you have all of that. And on top of that, it's aesthetic value. But without any regard to any of the other ecological services, we are only taking out aesthetic value and putting it onto a platter and saying, now we will fund this aesthetic value. That becomes an R&D. So all the money is going into building aesthetic value on the river front. Artificial aesthetic value. It's not a natural aesthetic value. Yeah. So that becomes a single most important. And while you are creating that artificial aesthetic value, you can also create a rent value. And that becomes very important for a municipal corporation. And that becomes very important for people who control how a municipal corporation is governed.
So we are taking into consideration the revenue and not planning
Yes.
the natural economy, which we should actually
Right.
take into consideration.
And why are we doing that also, we'll answer in a minute. Yeah.
In the beginning you said it is okay to have those type of embankments or the perennial rivers like Thames or Rhine or Siena. Is just because our river is not perennial, that's why we are kind of the embankment is not so good idea. Of course, embankment is not good. Interference with nature is not good at all. And that's the baseline. But you were correct me if I'm wrong in the statement I've understood from you that the embankment or the type of river corridors they did at the Thames or Siena is okay because those rivers are perennial.
Yeah. So first thing is, you probably heard wrong, or maybe I said wrong. It's not okay, but I said it's not a good idea to copy what they have done exactly, right? Why they have done that? There are various reasons, and there are historic reasons. So one of the important points is because it was a perennial river, and because it was used very much for transportation. And when you have that, and you have the cities eating into the into the river, then ships cannot cross. So therefore they build banks there which kind of arrest the rivers, and it allows the transportation to happen. One. Second thing is, the rivers in the temperate climates have very low diversity of riparian zones. You know, the interface between the aquatic ecosystem and the terrestrial ecosystem is extremely weak. Yeah, because it's a very cold climate, it's a harsh climate, and you know, the river freezes for a long time, and all these things happen, and therefore you don't have that diversity. So when you don't have that, and then you create an embankment, okay, chalo, theek hai, at least to that extent it's okay.
Like a natural gutter sort of.
Natural gutter for pathway for transport and all of that. But
the amount of destruction is less, but it is still bad.
it's still a destruction.
No, it's not less. This last 3 years data, the Rhine, 70% of the Rhine dried out, and they couldn't run any transportation anymore in the Rhine. So now they are breaking those embankments and they are restoring the floodplains to restore the level of water in the Rhine. And this is the same thing that has happened in the Thames, the same thing that has happened in Los Angeles. You were referring Las Vegas. In Los Angeles, if you see the old movies, Terminator and whatever, they've actually got car chases happening on the Los Angeles River, which is completely concretized. And now they are facing a water crisis, so they are redoing it. Now they are breaking all the concrete on the Los Angeles River, and they are restoring their floodplains, and they are restoring the river back to its natural order. So all that is, the damage has been tremendous. It's just that they have experienced the damage over a longitudinal longer period of time. We have experienced the damage over a much shorter period of time because we built dams over doing all these things. We did those stupid things like building dams, Then we did further stupid things by not continuing the riverine, by not giving any importance to the riverine ecosystem or the people living on river banks, so to speak. Somehow we have muddled our way through these past 60, 70 years, but we haven't learned anything from the damage we've done.
Yeah. So that's about the riverfront, what we are doing towards it. But the riverfront is no different from a large dam. We can look at the large dam from the same lens that we are looking at the riverfront. What are we doing with a large dam? We are converting a flowing water ecosystem into a static water ecosystem. They are totally different. The lentic water and lotic water ecosystem, they are different. The vegetation is different, the fauna is different, the exchange of matter and energy is different. All of that is different, and when that changes, the food chain downstream after the dam changes. And we have seen that. And it encourages the formation of invasive species like water hyacinth and piscia and all of that. Invasive fish like roe, katla and catfish and all what we have today, guppy, all of those tilapias, all those kind of fish. So the dam is actually no different from a riverfront development. When you dam it, and the most important change which happens when you have a dam is the change in behavior of human beings with the river. Now we have a tremendous surplus of water supply. Now we have a surplus water throughout the year. Now we can do whatever we want. If we have 3 cars, we'll wash all 3 cars every day. Yeah, we do all of that when you get surplus water. And most important, you are not able to see the level of water with your eyes. It's not visible. If you have a Syntex tank in your house, you keep monitoring kiti zala pani, panshet madhe kiti zala pani, nobody cares. Right? We don't see the level going down. And then we use it for whatever. I see Divyanshu cleaning 3 cars, then I say, why not me? So sense of justice prevails over that. And then everybody gets into that. So dams not only change the ecosystems, but they also change behaviors that human beings have. And that's exactly what riverfront is also doing. It changes behaviors that we have. So therefore, in one session when I was asked, what do we need to do to improve human nature, Pune citizens' relationship with the rivers? There is a very simple thing to it, right? Draw drinking water downstream and throw your sewage upstream. That will immediately change the way with how every citizen behaves with their river. Because now we know that you're going to drink the water that you're going to pollute. So you will stop polluting that river, whatever. I mean, at least some thing that you will be able to stimulate in that.
Because that people downstream or the villages, cities downstream who get the sewage-laden water, why did they never revolt?
So basically what you are saying, they are the people who are getting from us.
म्हणजे
Why they are not...
उरली कांचन जसे बंड करून उठले की आमच्याकडे कचरा टाकू नका तसं
We have succeeded in taking an entire ocean dry. If you go and see the kind of damage they have done with Amu Darya, Sikh Darya and all of that over there.
And we think the only way to purify water is through an STP stream. Yeah.
How do you... So, according to you, is the riverfront development, does it make economic sense or not?
So what do you mean by economic sense? To an economist, it makes sense because it adds to the GDP, it increases spending, public spending, and it makes some people happy.
Short-term economy.
Short-term economy, right? So that way...
is there a way to quantify the long-term economic impact?
So what happens is, economists always, whenever they are doing a large public spending on natural capital, what they do is what is called as a cost-benefit analysis. They do a cost-benefit analysis. And cost-benefit analysis in economics always has a component of future generations, which is called as discounting the value. So they use a percentage which is called as the discounting rate. So every cost-benefit analysis, let's say the riverfront development cost and benefit analysis comes to a positive for benefits and less for cost. So we are going to go ahead. But we add a discounting value of future generations, and that is 20%. And that suddenly brings it down. So the benefits reduce when you discount what happens to the future generation. And for a very long time, till today, the discounting rates are unreal. We don't think for future generations.
There is no discounting.
Very less.
What happened after 2
So when I say very low discounting rates, what I mean in simple English is that
Yeah.
the benefits for future generations are going to be the same as the benefits for current generation. So it doesn't capture the ecological degradation.
Is there a way to capture that?
There is a way to capture that.
But they ignore it.
But that is not considered.
It's not considered. The most important ecological value of a river, which we have not understood, is its ability to self-purify. Right? When it travels over distance, the food chain is actually able to convert all the pollution in the river and put it back into fresh water and put it into the food chain. So it gets dispersed. And for a very long time, when the population of Pune was less, when our per capita consumption of water was less, it was getting purified until it went to Ujni. It was very good water that reached Ujni. But the spate of dams and barrages which we have created, the hysin, the phosphate load which has increased, the sewage which has increased, all that has added up, and now we have overshot the river's ability to self-purify.
So now they
And
should
now
revolt.
they should actually rise up and say, now this is not a good time. We have to have water purification.
Across the threshold which nature can do.
Yeah, huh? Exactly. So we are right
They
now
are the
from the first day
stakeholders.
we are saying Solapurkars have to get to work. And that's one of the points we made in Mumbai when we presented to Sharad
Solapur
Patil,
ka hai?
Sharad Pawar and all of those, Aditya Thackeray and all that. We said, Solapurkaranka problem hai. And that's also the article which I'm writing, data mala.
म्हणजे
They have approached. Yeah.
we are blaming Solapur and
Local forces, local influencers have put them. But not on the banks, beyond the banks. It's very simple. You have the development, udhar karo. Yeah. And here you will have the development, you will have parks, you will have walkways. Today you have a walkway. I can build a park here of natural this thing. It is all there.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it possible in theory at least or hypothetically that a team of ecologists, economists, urban developers can come together and say have a target of only 5,000 crores, 500 crores, 1,000 crores as the reduced budget, so there is pressure on ROI and this land generation will go away. And then what best can be done? Can we now have a more sensible riverfront development which pleases everybody including the ecology?
So it is definitely possible, and this is something which I have been talking for a very long time. There's a economics textbook which is called Paul Samuelson's textbook, which is the first basic textbook for any economics. You go to a BSc course or a BA program, you will have to buy that Paul Samuelson.
It was my textbook 40 years ago.
40 years ago. So he's a Nobel laureate, by the way. So he said something which is very important. He says, as long as I write the textbooks of economics, I don't care who runs the country. Right? So my complaint has been, and I've been very vocal about this in front of Urjit Patel, Vijay Kelkar and the others, and in several forums in Delhi also, that the Niti Aayog, there is not a single hydrogeologist, there is no river scientist, there is no botanist, there is no zoologist, there is no anthropologist. How do you have a Niti Aayog only with economists
And engineers
and engineers?
and historians.
and in AC rooms.
So it is representative of an extremely minute population of the
AC
country.
rooms मध्ये काय नाही.
And that extremely minute population of the country understand the manufacture of currency extremely well, but they don't understand the natural capital as well. So if you have to have that combination, exactly what you're saying is we should have ecologists, hydrogeologists, geologists, anthropologists, geographers, all of that sitting in the Niti Aayog. You should have tribal representation, you should have Adivasis, you should have the Santals, the Mundas, the Bhils, the Phasepardis. They are all citizens of the country. They don't have a voice.
Yeah, so my question again as a continuation, like Ketake and Manashri have done for this small stretch, can we put together a counter proposal saying instead of this way of river development, this is
Has
the...
been done.
We have
It
done
has done. Yes,
We
the
have done it on several forums.
two plans are already ready.
And when it was presented, the only thing which they took from our proposal was the word rejuvenation. They made it river development. Instead of that, they took river rejuvenation, because that is
No,
what
I'm
we
not
said.
talking about the actual plan of what should be done. How one should go about defining the new better river.
Yeah.
The first criteria is you stop dumping, you repurpose your sewage and stop
There's just
dumping
too
the
much
sewage
money.
in the river.
There's just too much money.
The commissioner insisted on doing a sample stretch. Can we ask for a sample stretch to in our hands?
Ah,
They will
that's
never give you.
They want you to.
हाँ
नहीं नहीं वो ये भी हमारा ही फंड है. टैक्स पेयर मनी इज आवर फंड ना.
There is no precedent.
no you collect your own.
वो भी किया है ना कैंप में.
ये तो जाने ही वाला है. और
विश्व कम्युन के पीछे सैंपल स्ट्रेच किया है. ऑलरेडी सैंपल स्ट्रेचेस हैव बीन डन विद देयर कैपिटल एंड विद एविडेंस टू कॉर्पोरेशन दैट दिस इज
त्यांना
पॉसिबल.
दिसत नाहीये
इतना होने के बाद में भी दे आर स्टिल नॉट टेकिंग ऑन दैट आइडिया एंड डूइंग.
See, I'll tell you what.
ये भी किया है.
Committees lack teeth. Committees can only make reports. They don't have any administration. What will happen, I'll tell you. They will do it, it will become beautiful, and then some new politician will come and make a riverfront development. So that will get changed.
oh you
So citizens lack the teeth. No, we don't live in a democracy at all. This is a pseudo
The
democracy.
only answer for all these questions, the demand can only come from citizens, from people, mass people support. That is the only way which can change the government's minds, which can change Supreme Court minds, and it was showed by the farm bill. When the farmers came,
What we do is, what he's saying is you have to live within the biocapacity, right? Which is the ecological carrying capacity of that landscape. Now, the administrators are only acting to increase the carrying capacity of the land. And therein where is the
So
conflict?
it's a problem of governance as well, right? The democratic governance of the
Administrators,
entire.
governance, everybody.
It's a governance issue as well that we
So
need to.
we have to take out the part of increasing supply and move into managing demand, which is far more important. Look at water in Pune.
Right.
How much
It's
water?
very similar to the way that the energy system is, because renewable energy, to sell renewable energy vis-a-vis non-renewable energy, is we kind of have to go through the same kind of democratic process, decentralization, and basically changing the mindset of the demand.
managing the demand.
Right.
That's what it is. You can't have the same demand even with renewables. It is not possible.
Because the ecological aspect of this, whatever we are trying to convince and argue about, a lot of citizens are also not convinced.
Yeah.
Government doesn't care about
Yes.
the environment. So because they care only about the economics
Right.
part of it, then how about how do we build a very strong or a stronger case where we can prove that even economically this cannot sustain maybe after a few years.
Basically, does it make any difference to those secondary, the majority of the people? Does it really make a difference whether the riverfront is done or not?
Yeah.
Because changing mindsets is very important, but it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because human behavior is the most difficult thing to change actually.
Right.
So, because we don't have enough time right now, already
Right.
past 1 season almost. So how do we build that?
No, it's absolutely difficult. It's very, very difficult. The reason is because economics doesn't account for natural capital. Right? That's a simple answer to it.
natural capital.
Economics doesn't account for natural capital. You take the case of the GDP, the gross domestic product. You open any newspaper and you'll see GDP, India's GDP वाढला, कमी झाला, 5% झाला, 7% झाला. We have overtaken America, China is overtaking us, so on and so forth. We are a nation obsessed with GDP. Now GDP accounts for all the flow of money in the economy, with no regard to what that flow is adding up to. War is great for GDP. COVID, swine flu was superb. Every accident on the expressway adds to the GDP.
Yes.
So it's not just the spending which is important, but it is also what kind of spending. Right? One part. Second is, at what cost has the GDP increased? Is a question which the GDP doesn't account for. So how much natural capital has depleted? How many mines have been exhausted of the minerals? You go to the site of Ministry of Natural Resources, MNRE, and you look for exhausted mines in the country. It publishes a list of exhausted mines in the country. And you'll be surprised of how many exhausted mines are there. Limestone, calcite, bauxite, iron ore, all of these, there are exhausted. We know Kolar gold mine, right? There is no gold in that. So there are many other exhausted. Now that is not captured in the GDP. Because we have taken that mineral, we have converted it into currency, and now it is floating in the currency. But we have depleted that mineral for future generations. Now that is not existing. Which means the GDP is a profit and loss statement with one side missing. It's only a profit statement, there is no loss. Which is completely ironic towards accounting principles, right?
Take into account who has the capital.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
Who is generating?
Yeah, so there are many such limitations to it. So for example, it also doesn't tell us how is the wealth distributed in the country. So that's also not. Yes. Sorry, meeting for the first time.
Yeah, I have a more conceptual question. Isn't there any benefit whatsoever from the proposed plan of this riverfront, barring the land creation and all that? Because there will be stagnant water throughout the year, where usually the river runs dry 8 months a year. So isn't that water going to
Which
recharge
river runs dry?
the river? Much of the year when it's not raining,
Yeah.
is nearly dry and it's not full with water, right? Only monsoon
No.
and post-monsoon months.
Partial
we
side
have
is.
converted every peninsular river from seasonal to perennial with our sewage. Yeah, every river is perennial. There is no dry river in the country. Yeah, because we hold back water in the dam, use it. You know, so how is sewage generated? You look at the per capita consumption. In Pune, per capita consumption they say is 135 liters per capita. Okay, 135 liters if each one of us is getting, we are able to drink and utilize it about 10 liters. 125 liters goes back as sewage. That is called as a non-consumptive water use. Consumptive water use doesn't end up as sewage. Consumptive water use you consume, make chai, sharbat and all of that, or cook. Exactly. So out of 135 liters, if 125 liters is going to go back as polluted water, then it has to be a perennial river. We are a population of 60 billion, 50, whatever.
My question was, if this stagnant water after this grand scheme is put into place is going to keep recharging groundwater better than before, maybe there is a benefit.
So there is a capacity of how much groundwater recharge can be done. After that, it just saturates. The water table increases, and there are severe repercussions of water table increasing also. And the biggest problem is of water table increasing is that it turns the land into what we call in Marathi as sharped, brackish, saline hote.
Saline.
Entire Punjab is saline because of excessive canal irrigation. Yes.
Somebody was saying that Sabarmati thing has actually made the Ahmedabad now on very shaky ground.
Yeah.
Because the water table has increased.
Water table has risen. So your question is, isn't there even a single benefit from that?
Why are we proposing?
This is the first time I am thinking of such a question.
That's a good question. Because we
I've
are
never thought of
proposing it, then there has to be at least one good point in that.
You can run on concrete and you can have your bel puri, pani puri wala.
That is more important in life.
Increase, yeah. You can have
That has become important in life.
One benefit aside from the economic.
हा म्हणजे आजच्या पुरतं जगा नंतरचं बघायचं कणिश
आप मेला
कशासाठी.
जग बुडला.
How does, I'm staying here, I'm a citizen of Pune. How do you tell me that this riverfront development is going to have an economic, how does it make a difference to me? I mean, how does it make an impact or a
So you don't start thinking about where your water comes from and where it goes.
No, if his water is coming from a Kent purifier, it doesn't matter.
If you are not aware of what,
He will think about it.
have that awareness, right?
After this interaction which we had, has it changed anything in your mind?
Yes.
It has.
From a bigger picture.
Correct.
Because you have to, but then you have to understand the complexity of the bigger picture.
Right. But at least, did you get some more reason to believe that if there is a riverfront development, I should be concerned?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that's I think what we have to do. So every citizen is, once Einstein famously said, school education interfered with my intelligence.
I think what he is
I
coming
know.
from is.
I know.
That
Oh,
is
ह्याचे कान
interfering.
असे
Not
बंद
with us.
ह्याचे कान बंद केले पाहिजे.
Lot of
abhi face
education has taught us that water comes from a tap.
हाँ.
See the rocky outcrops. Roosting sites असतात birds साठी. All disturbed.